Good evening, Matt.
Good evening, David.
Good to see you.
Nice, thank you. Thanks for having me here in the UK.
It's great. Welcome to the Mastery series.
Oh, thank you.
And one of the things that I'm really fascinated about is how overcoming abuse can lead to mastery.
Okay.
And I'm curious, you're going to be doing an abuse education series next year.
Yes.
And how did you get to that? What made that come about?
And it started like a half hour, group healing. But then, I thought more and more and more about abuse and how it affects almost everybody. Because the way I define abuse is that whatever that you're doing that pulls you off your path, and your path is, say, connecting to pure source. I see it as some form of abuse. So whether it's, say, minimum abuse, right, very light distortions, to, say, extreme abuse, where you get like you're sexually molested, tortured, things like that. Again, anything that pulls you off your path is what I consider abuse. So with that being said, what was your question?
How did you come to sort of see that this was necessary to help people get back on the track to success and wholeness?
Success. Okay, so why do I call it right? So
why focus on abuse?
Okay, so since most individuals run, so say, some form of abuse, right? Why not use that as a tool to perpetuate us, or use it as a springboard for success? Because a lot of times, most individuals, you go to abuse counseling or abuse clinic. What do they do? They really don't. They create a workaround that situation, right? You might. I don't believe it as a true healing, but again, you go to a counseling clinic. They basically show you how to deal with the situation, right? They don't really allow you to use it as a cornerstone for success. If you look at any successful individual, right, they've had some sort of, say, abuse, right? Some sort of, say, dark times in their life. So what did they do that most individuals don't? Right? Again, look at any entrepreneur that you've had. Somebody of great success. They've been pushed. They've been shoved to a point that something breaks in them, and then they start to use whatever they have pushed them down to those deep levels as, say, a strong propellant to, say, push them or catapult them to their great success. And that's what the abuse series is about. It's not about healing. It is about healing, but it's not about, say, living with it. It's actually using it as a propellant to, say, get you into those high levels of success.
So this is quite a radical shift when you think about what the definition of abuse usually is. It's not, you're saying it's something that takes you off your life path or off track, knocks you off track.
Right.
And so that's quite radical to say that anything that knocks you off track is abuse.
It is. But, let's look at it this way. Say that, say you're successful. Does that make sense? Right? And there's and I work with a lot of people who are successful financially. I don't call it significant success, but they're successful. And you go, well, I don't get abused, or I haven't been abused. But how many people do you know, Dave, that are successful, and the money becomes a slave to them? They become a slave to their money.
Would that be really common?
Exactly. Or they become a slave to their jobs. They have to. They think that they have to, say, lose their family, right? They have to work their fingers to the bone, right? They have to feel guilty about the money that they make. Aren't those all forms of some form of abuse within us?
I think it's true. Traditionally speaking, we wouldn't look at it like that. But when you put it like that, it sounds like abuse.
It is.
It's crazy.
Exactly.
We're almost reframing what abuse is here.
Yes. And I know this is a touchy subject. Let's look at it another form of abuse that we don't think of as abuse. Say that you come from a really loving parent. Okay? And you go, well, how the hell can that be abuse, right? But have you ever seen or maybe even experienced yourself a parent that was so loving that they did everything for you to take care of you?
I can relate to
That's
that.
it.
Yeah.
Can you relate? Okay. And you would go, well, how can that be abuse? They took care. They were so loving. They could take care of everything, and they did like everything. But as you grew up, you didn't know how to do anything yourself.
Yeah, you lose that independence,
Exactly.
that sort of initiative of self-starting, self-leadership.
Exactly. And then you go, well, how does that equate to abuse? Okay. So, so you have to understand, say, their intent on why they do it. And again, just tapping into your mother, she didn't do it on purpose, right? But basically, those individuals who are so loving, who are so caring, who are so endearing, they're very insecure. So what do? They latch on to somebody, right? For example, their husband dies. Maybe in your case, their husband dies. They go to the next, say, child, and then start to smother or wrap themselves around them to feel secure, right? So, and I know that comes from a loving space, but it starts to abuse you, right? I mean, look at your own experience.
Yeah, because then you're not in the locus of your own power. You're kind
Right.
of receiving someone else's smothering intent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And then you can't do anything for yourself. Um, this really parallels, and I know it's a very, very sensitive subject because we've all had, say, parents who just love the hell out of us. But then I work with a lot of parents who do that, and they go, "Moss, can you do something with my kid because they can't function in society?" Well, it's like you've smothered them so much that they don't identify with who they are, right? They've never learned how to do anything for themselves because they haven't been able to. They haven't had that, say, experience of, say, falling. They haven't grown, they haven't expanded, right? Because we want to save them from that abuse, so-called abuse of life. In fact, we go from one pattern of, say, growth into a pattern of, say, non-growth. And then I just want to get something else across.
Yeah.
So severe abuse. So people, like, say, in a cult. Makes sense?
Yeah.
Cult type patterns. So what do? They do everything. It's called a groomer. They groom you. You can't do anything. You're not allowed to do anything for yourself. Okay. The reason why they do that is that they don't teach you any like grooming techniques or how to take care of yourself. So you're 15, you're 18, you're in your teens, you have a conscious mind, you can run away. But since you don't know how to do anything for yourself, right? What do? You fall back into that person that abuses you because you can't go anywhere. Right? Isn't that parallel to, say, those parents who, say, smother us? Right? They get older
Because love and
they can't
abuse are fused together. They're so close.
Well, it's the same thing, right? They make you dependent on that person, whether it's from an abuse state or whether that person loves you dearly.
Yeah.
Right?
And so, I guess while we're talking about cults and I guess religion and spirituality, a lot of people in the New Age are seeking support for their patterns and financial success, emotional healing, relationship healing through spiritual approaches.
Right.
How does that lend itself to addressing abuse?
It lends to more abuse.
And how does that happen? How does it? Why is that? Why does that happen? It's not fair.
Well, I know. Well, look at religion. Any religion or any spiritual movement. What do you have to do? You have to suffer at some level, right? To say see the light of God, or you have to suffer in this world to say get enlightened on the other side, right?
Right. So it's the planet of suffering. There's a belief system that this is the sort of arena or the reality of suffering, that we have to suffer, and through suffering we learn.
Right.
That's the rule set, or the belief system of humanity.
Right.
How does that benefit us, and is that true?
if you are running, say, success patterns, then the suffering will make you learn. Just like I said, those entrepreneurs.
Right.
But how many people actually say learn from the suffering, or do they seem to repeat the same patterns?
It just perpetuates.
It just perpetuates. Look at your parents, right? Most likely, most people do the same exact thing as their parents did, as their grandparents did, as their great grandparents did. Does that make sense? Would you call that learning?
No.
It's called perpetuation.
Yeah.
And then basically, since you've done it so well, that distortion, by the time it gets to your generation, you've dug yourself way too deep into that hole. Right?
So perhaps when people are doing personal growth and spirituality, are they addressing the root? What are they addressing if they're not getting beneath this perpetuating pattern?
Well, personal growth, again, anything that we do normally, or any modality that we use, whether it's religion, personal growth techniques, motivation techniques, it doesn't get to the core level of, say, why we have abuse or why we're lacking in success. Right? It gets to a surface level. So I can go deeper in that if you'd like.
Please do.
Let's see. So, for example, like you have bad relationships, right? You have, say, a relationship that makes you suffer, right? So you go, well, I have a bad relationship, or what I'm going to do is exchange that person, right? I'm going to get out of this relationship with that person, and then what do? We connect with somebody else, and then we still have that.
So why isn't there any learning?
Well, that's just it, because we think it's something outside of our, say, reality that's causing it, right? I'm suffering in my job. I'm going to go get a new job, right? I'm suffering in my marriage or relationship. I'm going to go get another, say, person, right, and start a new relationship.
Yeah.
I'm suffering from like an illness. I'm going to try to heal myself, but then we wrap up in another.
So people are projecting it outside of themselves.
Exactly.
And so what about the people who are actually doing the work, who are owning it, and yet still aren't changing the patterns? Because there's a lot of people who have matured sort of beyond saying, oh, well, it must be their fault, the job's fault. Oh, it must be my stuff. Then they go and do a whole load of work on themselves.
Right.
What's happening there when they aren't able to shift it even then?
True. So those individuals, they become aware of their pattern, and then they start blaming themselves for it. It's like, I own my problems.
So profound. I mean, it's so simple, but it's
very simple.
But it's profound that they blame themselves.
They blame themselves.
Oh my God!
And then they don't go any deeper, right? Because they don't realize that the patterns that they're running are mostly lineage patterns.
That's the key.
That's the key. So you have to go down to a very deep level, and that's what I do. That's what we do. We're going to be doing through the abuse series. Is like we're going to go deep down every aspect of ourselves and see where the root cause of that abuse comes from.
So this going to the root.
Yes.
This is what you do.
Yes.
How? How are you?
How?
Why is it that you can go to the root and reach these pots that other
modalities
don't?
Yeah.
And so fast.
Right. So the reason why is through the 2 near deaths that I've had, basically I see your core level programming, or some of you might be calling it your spirit, because let's get to the point that most people think that if I reach my spirit or connect to my spirit, then I'll be okay. Right? The core issue of why you have the issues that you have, or the core reason of why you have the issues that you have, is because your spirit is not awakened. So your life is a reflection of how awakened your spirit is. And most individuals don't acknowledge that. They're always, say, a surface level issue. Right? So what I do is get to your blueprint or your core level. Or basically your spirit level. Most modalities or most of those things that you do cannot get to, say, the spirit level. But once you change that spirit level or your blueprint, then everything unravels the way it should, and then you start to progress towards where you want to go.
So is that awakening, becoming aware, this process of becoming aware of your blueprint?
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that's what you do? You literally switch the light on for people so they become aware of their blueprint?
Exactly. But you start to become aware. One, you start to become aware that most likely the patterns that you're running are not yours. Does that make sense? It goes generations back. And then two, once you let go of that blame game, right? Or I'm doing something wrong, and that's why my life is. You start to see it as a pattern or a program, right? You did it, your mom did it, your uncle did it, and so on and so on and so on. And you go, okay. You awaken to that fact, and then again with the abuse series or some sort of awakening, you can disconnect from that program that's running in you, and that's where you eradicate any form of abuse.
So these programs, so say I had an early trauma in my life, then that trauma holds me back from success in relationships, money, work.
Yes.
Would that trauma be ancestrally linked, or would it be ad hoc? And does it matter that how deep that goes to shift that pattern of abuse into success? I guess what I'm asking is, what's the difference between just a normal trauma and a trauma that's perhaps linked to a pattern that goes down through the ancestry?
So most of the issues that I see with people go much deeper than their lifetime. It's an underlying. So say you have a trauma, but most likely your ancestors would have had of similar type of issues.
Right. So it's
really
that's
one and
not
all
your
the same.
fault. Even that's just happening.
Right.
And it's not the one-off trauma. It's the patterning of trauma through the lineage.
Yes.
That's actually.
And it's not even about the trauma, by the way.
Wow. That's crazy.
So let's think of it this way. Everybody has experiences, but the emotions and what you attach to that experience is the difference. Right? So what I do is I get to the core level issue of why you have the issues that you have, and then I don't say eradicate or delete that experience for you, because that's written in time. Right? Say you've got abused as a child, you can't change that. Right? But what you learn from that, you can change. Right? Instead of say, I get abused as a child, and because I've been abused as a child, that's my lot in life. That's what God did to me. That's what we've always done in our family. Does that make sense? So in this lifetime, I guess I've got my hands cuffed, and I'm just going to be abused. Right? And then we can't get out of it. What I'm saying is like, okay, I've gotten abused. Right? What are we going to do about it? What are we going to take off, or what are we going to take away from it? That's what successful people do. Successful people, it's not like they came, they arrived with a silver spoon in their hands or anything like that. But they go, okay, I've gotten abused. What am I going to learn from it? How am I going to toughen from it? How am I going to get confident from it? Right?
Yeah.
So it's just like we exchange meanings on what that means.
So the sense of self that has become perhaps fixed around identifying with the abuse shifts and becomes more flexible and is able to take on a different meaning and different patterns and perhaps a different sense of self around it.
Right. So let me give you an example. So say, for example, that you come to me or you do a meta healing or a meditation with me. Again, I don't have to work on you one-on-one. So I guide you through this space, and then say that you have lack of money for something. Right? And it's like, okay, you go back in your lifetime or maybe a generational pattern is like, well, you lack money, and no matter what you do to say acquire money, you always say lack money. Right? Again, if you win the lottery, right, millions of dollars, most likely and this is statistics, within 6 months you would lose the money and go back into or be worse off than where you were 6 months ago.
It's unbelievable.
Right? Again, you can check statistics on that. So it's like, so why is that? So again, so the way with my abilities work, I can take you back, either an individual or at a group level, I can take you back and go, oh, and this is a real life story, so in this scenario, and I'm just giving you the real life story, that person that, say, couldn't hold on to money probably came, in this example, came from a really wealthy family that, say, abused people with their wealth. Right? So in this reality, they said, I hate wealth so much because it's abuse. So basically, wealth is equated to abuse in their psyche. So the wealthier they get, the more abuse they get. So they stay away from wealth because they don't want to experience the abuse. Does that make sense?
It does, and that could apply to a quality of love or a quality of, in other areas where you want to be successful.
Of course.
Or where the quality of that was so tied in with abuse, like we talked about that smothering love.
Exactly.
So you'd stay away from that.
Exactly. In love situations, say you get abused, and the only time somebody recognized you or acknowledged that you were even there is when they started to abuse you, right? So what do? Kids especially, they want attention. So they'll get abused to just feel that attention. It's actually, being recognized is of a higher value than food and water.
Yeah.
So a kid will do anything to be recognized, even be abused. So you rewrote your program. So you get into your teens, your 20s, your 30s, what's the pattern of relationships? Most likely people run this pattern is that abuse means love. So for you to feel, even experience love, you would have to get abused. So what do? You attract abusive relationships. Say you fell into a loving relationship that there was no abuse, you wouldn't feel love. And I know it sounds weird, but there's
because it's so entwined with abuse. You would need abuse to feel love.
Exactly. So that you rewrote at some level that pattern. So it's crazy, isn't it?
It's so back to front, topsy turvy.
Yes.
But it's how we're programmed.
It's all a matter of program. It's not about being a nice person, a bad person, doing Hail Marys or whatever people do to say reclaim themselves. It's just a series of programs.
I mean, one area I was listening to some of your introductory sessions on abuse, and one area that I found absolutely fascinating, quite groundbreaking in psychology. Because I'm a trained Gestalt psychotherapist, I found it really, like I say, groundbreaking. And it's this point whereby the person who gets abused is often the strong one who is present in their bodies, who has more power. And then the abuser literally does something to trigger them or knock them out of their center.
Yes.
And therefore almost occupies the middle ground. This is what you were saying.
Yes.
And then you, as the victim, kind of come out of yourself and then are feeling sort of perhaps even the abuser's unfelt world or whatever it is they've done to push you out of your center so they can almost enjoy your presence.
Right.
Could you talk how you learn this and this body of knowledge? It's just from to me it's made such a huge impact.
Right. So the body of knowledge that I tap into is called exponential intelligence. So and basically the handbook on how we live. So when I see abuse, just to clarify, is that when I say off your path, basically out of the present moment. Does that make sense to you? If you're in a present moment state, one, you'll never be abused. Because if you're in a present moment state, you would understand who you are. You would understand yourself from a much higher level than who you think you are. Does that make sense?
It complete. Yeah.
Okay. So you're solid. You're grounded, right? So those individuals would most likely attract, if they run patterns of just like a knight in shining armor type situation. Right? Those types of people. They're strong individuals, but what do? They get attracted to people who burden them. Right? That makes sense?
Yeah.
So that's one example. So getting back to your example, you're solid and complete. You would most likely attract somebody that's all over the place. They're lost in time. So for them to feel solid and complete, they would have to latch on to somebody that's, say, connected in time or present. Right? So the best way to latch on is to, say, attack. somebody who's in that present moment space, and then take over their, say, space-time. That makes sense. So they would latch on to that present moment, and so when they attack somebody or they slap somebody around or abuse somebody, basically it pulls them into a present moment state, and that's where they feel safe, grounded. Makes sense.
Yes.
Although it pushes the abusee off center until they reclaim themselves and they come back, and then they, and then they feel centered again, and then that's where they get abused.
So when they get pushed off center, do they go into perhaps an old trauma out of like in an ancestral pattern? Because what I'm noticing in my own sort of biography is these very familiar, almost sort of old islands where I've been in a sort of isolation and almost like prison states where I can get knocked out of my power, my center, and then all of a sudden I can't quite get back because I'm so identified with these other zones.
Yes.
Is that quite
Yes.
common for people almost
Exactly.
to lose that sense of presence in their body, time, space, and they've literally built fortresses or sort of suffering places,
of course,
which are just so familiar to almost drop into, and they can't get out.
They can't get out. Yes. So if you think about it, David, an abuser and an abusee is basically the same thing, just different aspects of it. So it's the same coin, but different sides of it. Right? So an abusee would need or attract an abuser to make them feel, say, wanted or complete. You know what I mean?
So they're still looking for something outside of themselves.
Yes.
So they're not complete. So they've got like spaces that can be got at, come into, pushed in.
Exactly.
Magnetizing almost.
Yes.
On some level.
Definitely. So this knight in shining knight in shining what is it? Armor example. People who want to do really good deeds. Right?
Oh my God! So it's the people who are wanting to do good end up getting abused.
Yeah,
good souls.
Because they would think that if I get abused, or if this life is a burden to me, I get abused, I'm going to benefit somehow from it. Either here or the hereafter. It doesn't work out that way, unfortunately.
So there's no brownie points for getting.
There's no brownie points for being abused or being burdened. I see both sides. There's no brownie points. The best way to do it is to really become enlightened here, and then you become enlightened on the other side. That's why we're here on Earth.
So, what I've noticed, it's very common, is the victim triangle. So you've got the victim, the abuser. What about the rescuer? Where does that fit in? Third party.
The rescuer, that's that knight in shining armor kind of example. Basically, they're a victim.
So they're just ready to join in the fun.
Yeah, they're just ready to join in the fun. Yep. So when you start to delete patterns, whether you're a victim or an abuser, when you start to delete all aspects of that pattern and you just are, you don't connect with people who abuse you, nor do you connect with you abusing other people, because you just naturally are. You don't need anything else outside of you.
And also, perhaps people who want to be abused, who try and sort of co-opt you into abusing them.
Yeah, passive aggressive.
Passive aggressive, yeah.
Yeah. So they're at a deeper level. They're trying to find themselves or identify themselves in time, because again, it's always about becoming into the present moment. So what that means is that they're lost in life, right? They're not sure. They're not connected in time. Again, they float away. They don't feel complete. Those are some of the symptoms. So what do? You abuse. You find somebody to abuse you. It wakes you up, right? You cut yourself. What does that do? It wakes you up. It pulls you into because pain pulls you into the present moment really strong, right? And let me give you an extreme example. If you've ever, say, experienced a tragic event, say like somebody died in front of you, right? A horrific death. And it is a horrific death. But if you've noticed that people who've gone through that much extreme trauma, people who've gone through that much extreme trauma, there's a euphoria. You know, time almost like stops. If you've ever been in that space, and it's like, wow, it's so brilliant here. So that's what we're after, that aspect of it. And people will do anything, like even destroy themselves, just for, say, a second of being in that euphoria. That's why abuse happens.
Maybe that's part of S&M or
Yes.
BDSM, that people use the punishing, sadistic pain to feel that moment of ecstasy.
Yes, exactly. People who cut themselves, right? It's painful, but it pulls them into that pleasure space.
Present moment, And this present moment, it's, as you're saying, in essence, it's what we would feel, this aliveness when we've ascended, or when we've come fully into our bodies.
That's what we're looking for. Okay? You don't have to be abused to feel that space. There's plenty of other positive ways to pull into your space and then stay there. And that's the real key between, and that's why we're doing the abuse series. People think that you have to abuse yourself completely to feel that euphoria. You have to abuse yourself to become wealthy or healthy, right? Again, none of those are healthy for you. So we created the abuse series, and then the 5 free calls even before the abuse series to prepare you for it. The introduction call, from abuse to success, I think it's on the website. That really gives the details of how abuse works, the foundation of abuse, why abuse is, why abuse happens, and it gives you really, like you were saying, a very, very different approach on abuse, way beyond, say, the normal psychology of abuse.
So, what are these 5 areas that you've created? Obviously, there's going to be 5 free calls on them, and then they're going to lead into a really deep course on it. So what are these 5 areas?
Right. So before I explain the 5 areas, the reason why we did the free calls is because as my abilities have grown and expanded, I've seen that people go through intense, say, transformations. I call it detox, right? And when people are releasing abuse, the release of that abuse tends to abuse them more.
It intensifies it. I can speak from personal experience.
Okay. Yes.
And it can be scary, and it can knock you sideways if you don't know what you're going to go into.
Right.
And if you don't know how to manage that, understanding that it's actually leaving you, and how to ride it out.
Right. So let me explain the detail on that. Why would that be more abusive for you? So you've lived in abuse. It's part of you. Does that make sense? So you work with me. I pull you out of the abuse. You get to see full on how much you've been abused. It's really an awakening experience, almost like a frightening experience. It's like, holy hell, that's what I went through, right? And it's really painful for people to separate, because they've integrated or interlaced with that abuse. So just imagine that you're so ingrained with that abuse, and then all of a sudden I jerk you out, because it is a very intense, very quick process, right? And I've gotten even faster. So I jerk you out. It's like a heart attack for some people.
Whoa! And plus the fact, if this is going back generation upon generation upon generation, where this distortion has got into the fabric of the psyche.
Yes.
It's literally cemented into the very essence of someone's being, because it's come through the lineage, through so many habits coming through the generations.
Exactly. So, and before I'll explain the 5, so I don't want to forget that question.
Sure.
You really brought up a good question, because people go, well, I went to a psychologist and I didn't feel any pain. Or, I went through some other modality or whatever.
And it's healed and I'm done.
And I didn't, and I didn't feel any pain. But you still have that problem, right? You still have that situation. You still have patterns of abuse, and that's why you keep attracting abuse. The reason why is because, again, it's surface level stuff, right? And that's why there's not a lot of pain of removal. Right, because it's something easy for you to remove, and then you feel good a little bit, but it hasn't completely, say, corrected it. What we do, like you said, it goes down generations, like, you know, ancient type stuff, and we help you delete that. It gets a little painful because it's so ingrained in your psyche. So, so that leads us to the 5, say, intro courses, and they are free for you.
Great resource being free, and they're all, they're immense value. Sometimes you hear free, you think, oh, but they're actually, I found immense value so far.
Oh, thank you so much. So the first one that we've done is a foundational on, say, the mechanics of how abuse works. Because once we start to know the mechanics, it's easy for us to pull away because we don't get emotionally involved. We just see the mechanics or the program, right? And they might not be in order. The next one is going to be on relationships. Okay, how relationships, and I explained the love, suffocating love type relationship, why relationships fizzle, why relationships don't have, say, that intimacy that lasts or prolongs. Different levels of, say, abuse in different relationships, passive aggressive, all those types. And again, so that's the foundation for relationships. We did that first because relationships is in everything. Relationship with yourself, relationship with your parents, relationship with your loved one, relationship with money, relationship with, say, God.
It's the foundation.
It's the foundation. The next one is that on money. The next one is on money. Money is, if you look at the tabloids, right? There's not a whole lot of people that are, say, successful that really enjoy their success. Makes sense?
I mean, in this country, Anton Deck, one of the 2 presenters, he's had such turmoil in his life.
Yep.
And, you can really see the pain and not enjoying all that wealth and fame and fortune.
Yeah. And examples like the Kennedys and other people like that, a lot of, like, deaths, a lot of early deaths, like stillborns, things like that. Why does it happen to, say, such a so-called successful family? Those are patterns of abuse. A lot of times those people, the more money or success they can hold on to, the more abusive they get. So we talk about, say, how to remove the abuse patterns and still be at those abundant levels. The third one is interesting, is about, say, parenting. And I call it parenting because I think all forms of abuse lead, and it goes much deeper, but lead on how we were raised. Makes sense?
Yes.
We didn't have strong mothers or strong fathers to show us that, hey, let's learn from, say, the distortions of life, or the knockdowns that we have, because we all get knocked down, right? But then how we pick ourselves up, we don't learn that from our parents. Basically, they show us how to get knocked down, the way we get knocked down, and to stay down and get even more abused, right? Because our parents haven't, say, learned it, so they just perpetuate that. So if you're a parent, so you don't pass those distortions on to your kids, and then we all have parents, disconnecting from, say, the parental distortions that we have. This is a great primer, by the way, especially for those women who are into the Me Too movement. So the Me Too movement can turn into a Me Never movement, because a lot of times what happens is that women who are in the Me Too movement, they actually, say, hide behind, so they become victims. Right? Again, the Me Too, I'm not knocking the Me Too movement down. It's a great movement to bring awareness and so on. But let's do that right, so you never have to run, say, victim type frequency, so it never has to happen to you again. So that's that introduction of that, and then the fourth one is the fifth one. What is it? Health. Sorry. The fifth one is about health. So if we don't have health, we can't really enjoy any other aspect, right? So
One
one of the
success and then terrible health. It's a killer.
It's a killer, and that's health is really a pivotal point. By a control source, whether it's somebody around you, like physically here, or a consciousness, or whatever you want to call it. If again, like you said, if you don't have your health, then you don't have anything. So again, another form of abuse because you can't enjoy anything. So really grounding you to disconnect from, say, patterns of abuse that lead to ill health.
But that's groundbreaking in itself to say that,
It is.
because most people say, oh, well, my health is bad, so that's just how it is. I take tablets and, there's quite a lot of belief that your health is your health and you can't change it.
Or you're hereditary.
Yeah.
Is your hereditary. My father died of heart attacks. I was going to die of a heart attack.
Yeah.
Through the work that we've done, again, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but a lot of people go, wait a second, my father died of a heart attack, and then they start to awaken, right? They start to come into their own power, and they go, wait a second, I don't need to have that hereditary pattern, because that's just a pattern. It's not a given. It's not written. So they can disconnect on how they age. A lot of people, through the work that I do, they actually start to reverse age.
Right. And then people come to some sort of default age of their most prospering period of their life.
Yes,
they can
definitely.
Reset themselves around that.
Yes.
So it's something really exciting.
Yeah, aging is an abuse pattern. In society, you don't have to age the way, say, our advanced civilizations.
Yeah, when people turn, say, 50 or 60, you hear them say things like, no, it's time to, get my slippers and my pipe, or no, it's time to, just calm down, or whatever. And that's, true, we go through different phases, but there's a lot of social conditioning that we almost start to die.
Of course, that's conditioning.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You start getting ill. You start taking more medication. Blah blah blah. It's not true. I went to the Amazon. There's a 78-year-old. He looks like his 40s. Dark hair. Just nicely built. No fat on him, and just lean. And he had that brilliance in his eye. It was fantastic.
It just shows you we've got such cultural expectations and norms that brainwashes into accepting this death process.
Or it's sealed, and even if you don't believe in it, society is so, say, deeply engrossed in it that, you get, say, pulled into it if you're not awakened.
Wow. Awesome. Any other sort of final things to add on abuse or the series?
Well, your series is mastery series, right? Mastery to completely heal from abuse. So that needs to be, in the end, to be no pain, to be completely peaceful. But then do we have to incorporate forgiveness, forgive your abuser, or forgive yourself? But according to Mas, forgiveness is not even possible at this level. So how are we going to master this abuse?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, where does forgiveness factor on people who are looking to get this level of mastery themselves when they've been through abuse?
Right.
Where does forgiveness factor in terms of people who've overcome things? Do they need to go through a forgiveness process? And how helpful is a forgiveness process to overcome abuse?
Right. And that's a touchy subject. So, but mechanically, so just look at it from a scientific perspective. Most people are not at a level where they can actually forgive somebody. Okay? So you go through counseling, you go through those healing centers and so on, and you go, well, the first thing that you have to do is forgive that other person. Okay? Well, if you go to the other person and go, do you remember when so-and-so happened? They probably don't even care. They probably don't even remember what happened, right? You're carrying the burden. So if you're forgiving, it's really about yourself, right? But then also, when people forgive, the way Jesus forgave, that's the way you want to forgive. When, say, somebody did some wronged you, does that make sense? You forgave them, right? You meet them, you say hi to them. What's the first thing that comes up into your mind? How they wronged you.
Yeah.
That's not forgiveness. If you forgave somebody, at a deep level where it actually say would benefit you, you would meet that person and you would have no recollection
So
of how they
how did
wronged
Jesus
you.
do that? How would you do that?
How would you do that? You would go to a level
Mm.
and delete it at a core level.
Which is what
And
you've been
then
saying
we
all
use-
along. Come back
Yeah.
into time,
Exactly.
see where you've been pulled into distortions out
Right.
of time, ancestrally or through the
Yes.
trauma.
So when you go to that, when you go that deep, you see that person, you don't see that they wronged you, that although you'd still remember the event, for example, if you, saw them, but there would be no, say, judgment attached to it. There would be no, say, negative emotion attached to it. In fact, you would look at that person and just go, oh, that person wronged me, but then because of that, I grew and expanded from it. That's what you want to do, not forgive them.
And also remove the pattern.
And also remove the
which is
pattern.
crucially important, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And that's true forgiveness. So again, most individuals aren't ready to forgive at Jesus' level. So it doesn't work. They just basically have judgment on it. So.
Brilliant. So that concludes our interview for
Thank you so much.
the Mastery series.
Thank you. Wonderful questions.
It's been really great hearing your
Thank you.
explanations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.